Mabuhay Manila, this is Ashadel from ManilaShaker.com, and this is the battle of the flagship killers, the Realme X3 SuperZoom versus the Poco F2 Pro. And the question, is there a clear winner? Let's find out. In this video, we will talk about what you can get with its price versus the price difference of the two. But first, let's talk about similarities. Both phones are built with Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and back, have the same 30 watts fast charge, both have 1080p Full HD Plus screens, both are running on Android 10.0, and they are also equipped with a 64 megapixel main camera. The designs are subjective. They both have quad cameras on the back, a circular camera module with an X-shaped arrangement on the lens, which is located in the middle of Poco F2 Pro. It has a smooth matte finish that can also be seen on Realme X3 SuperZoom, and this phone has a vertically aligned camera module with a square-shaped lens for periscope telephoto cam. On the frames are their buttons and ports. Realme X3 SuperZoom doesn't have a headphone jack, while Poco F2 Pro has it on top along with the mechanical pop-out selfie. They can't expand their memory, but they have large storage, and on the front, Realme X3 SuperZoom boasts a 6.6-inch IPS LCD screen with Full HD Plus resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. It has a pill-shaped cutout on the top left, while the Poco F2 Pro boasts a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus notchless full screen Super AMOLED display. On the display, they have different capabilities, and if you want a sharper, fluid, and color-accurate display, go for the Realme X3. But if you want a punchier color, brighter, and power-saving display, then Poco F2 Pro is for you. Both have good color, but think of what you will do on the phone. If you want to produce photo editing results using Lightroom or any sorts of productivity, that is, IPS LCD gives the most accurate one. But if you're just in it for media consumption, go for the Poco F2 Pro. Now for the camera, the Realme X3 SuperZoom has a 64 megapixel f1.8 main cam, 8 megapixel periscope telephoto lens, 8 megapixel ultra-wide, and 2 megapixel macro. While Poco F2 Pro has 64 megapixel f1.9 main cam, 5 megapixel telephoto lens, 13 megapixel ultra-wide, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. On the main cam, the color reproduction of Realme X3 SuperZoom has boosted colors and brightness at the same time, while Poco F2 Pro has more realistic and natural color output. The white balance of both phones are on point outdoors. However, when we go indoors, the color reproduction differs. We can distinguish the oversaturated colors from Realme X3 SuperZoom, and the white balance is not that accurate as on the Poco F2 Pro. Shooting at 64 megapixel mode, it's hard to decide which one is better because both have good colors. However, when we zoom in, Realme X3 SuperZoom got sharper images with extra details, while Poco F2 Pro have more natural looks. And looking at the pictures again, Realme X3 SuperZoom is a bit sharper and Poco F2 Pro outputs softer image. Now shooting at night, we can see that both have the same exposure here on a very low light situation, and when we enabled night mode, we get a different result. Realme X3 SuperZoom now has a brighter image with lesser noise, while the Poco F2 Pro has this violet color around the lens, and the night mode didn't do much to improve it. Now switching to ultra-wide, Poco F2 Pro has a good and balanced exposure. Although Realme X3 SuperZoom is wider, it tends to have a flare, and when we zoom in, it introduces color fringing. Still, colors are boosted on Realme X3 SuperZoom, while Poco F2 Pro outputs a more natural look. Now moving to the macro lens, Poco F2 Pro doesn't have a dedicated macro lens, but it uses the 5 megapixel telephoto cam to capture small objects, and it works fine. It is sharper and will get you closer to the subject, while Realme X3 SuperZoom's macro shot is not that impressive, but it is acceptable. Now moving to depth sensor, both have a subject to background separation, and colors are quite distinct as it uses the main cam to capture the subjects. We do get a saturated photo on Realme X3 SuperZoom, while we have a more natural looking photo on Poco F2 Pro. Now for the telephoto lens, well, Realme X3 SuperZoom has its own periscope lens, so we can get more details and sharpness when we zoom in. Now switching to the front cam, we got 32 megapixel on Realme X3 SuperZoom and 20 megapixel on Poco F2 Pro. Realme X3 SuperZoom outputs a pinkish skin tone, while Poco F2 Pro outputs more true-to-life skin tone. However, X3 SuperZoom got the advantage of having sharper images thanks to the 32 megapixel lens. Shooting outdoors, they have nearly the same color reproduction but skin tone is quite different. Realme X3 SuperZoom outputs color towards a pinkish tone, while Poco F2 Pro is more natural looking. Subject to background separation of both devices are okay, it has at least 98% accuracy. Overall, sharpness goes to the higher megapixel which is the Realme X3 SuperZoom, but color goes to Poco F2 Pro. On video recording, both can shoot 4K 60 frames but still differs in color reproduction. But what we notice is that 4K 60 frames and 1080p 60 frames on Poco F2 Pro doesn't have EIS, and it only applies on the 30 FPS option. In short, all video clips from Realme X3 SuperZoom have EIS, though Poco F2 Pro can shoot up to 8K video resolution. Talking about slow motion, both can shoot 960 FPS, though Poco F2 Pro can shoot super slow motion at 1080p resolution. Now switching to video mode on the front cam, Realme X3 SuperZoom has EIS, but it tends to have difficulty in controlling the exposure if it doesn't detect any face. But both don't have HDR processing and they both have exposure behavior when we introduce blown out highlights. We also got slow motion on the front, but Realme X3 SuperZoom outputs higher resolution. Now moving to their performance, both got flagship chipset. Poco F2 Pro is powered by the latest Snapdragon chipset on the market, Snapdragon 865 with 6GB of RAM and 128GB of internal storage. While Realme X3 SuperZoom is powered by Snapdragon 855 Plus, they both have 7nm transistor, which means both are power efficient and will produce less heat. The difference between these two chipsets is 865 chipset is capable of 5G, and yes, Poco F2 Pro has 5G connectivity. It also gives 20% faster graphics rendering for graphic-intensive games. So, is Realme X3 SuperZoom not worth it? Well, Realme X3 SuperZoom is catching up by offering internal boost like the performance mode, so it gives you at least the feel of faster graphic processing. And I must say, this Realme X3 SuperZoom is definitely worth it. Though for future-proofing, Poco F2 Pro offers 5G. This means that you can experience a 5G connection where it is available in the Philippines. For the speed tests and benchmarks, here are the clips. The Poco F2 Pro has UFS 3.1, and as you can see, Realme X3 SuperZoom sometimes is a second or two behind in opening apps. So even if we look on their skins, Poco F2 Pro has more power. Just remember, X3 SuperZoom is still good, it still offers flagship specs at a low price. We tested some games and surprisingly both phones didn't struggle on graphically demanding games. We didn't notice any difference, and it will now just depends on the matter of how you will use the phone. If you're a heavy multitasker or streamer, well, both have capabilities. Now for the battery, we have a 4300 mAh cell on Realme X3 SuperZoom, while Poco F2 Pro is backed by 4700 mAh battery. Both are capable of charging in 30 watts. And here are the results for the battery endurance and charging. We got a nice battery results on Poco F2 Pro, and if we enable dark mode, it will last longer. X3 SuperZoom on the other hand is still power efficient even if it has a lower milliamp power and with 120Hz. And it is because of the power efficient chip. For the price, Realme X3 SuperZoom is priced at 24,990 pesos while Poco F2 Pro has a starting price of 26,990. So for our verdict, they got a 2,000 peso price difference. If you don't have enough to buy Poco F2 Pro, then what you will get on Realme X3 SuperZoom is a fluid screen. Still a powerful chipset, 12GB of RAM which is considered as future-proof. Twice the storage, a periscope telephoto lens, EIS on all video settings, and an ultra-wide lens on front cam. While investing more on Poco F2 Pro, you will get a Super AMOLED display, more battery endurance, depth sensor, up to 8K video recording, 1080p 960fps low motion, a full screen display, a future-proof 5G, and lots of camera features. These two phones are powerful enough to handle your daily task. Poco F2 Pro is leading the race and it is more powerful than Realme X3 SuperZoom. So is there any advantage in buying Realme X3 SuperZoom? Yes, features. Impressive and unique features that will make you feel that your money is still worth it. And yes, it is for us. So free will is yours. Which phone do you like better? Let us know in the comment section below. Again, this is the comparison of the two flagship killers. That's it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to visit manilashaker.com for more tech news, reviews, and comparison of the latest device. Again, this is Aishadel. Mabuhay, Manila!